Wild hogs wreak havoc all across Central Florida. The pigs cause big problems for homeowners.
And trappers in Brevard County are getting creative and finding new ways to catch them.
Wild boars are smarter than most people realize. They learn faster than dogs, communicate through chemical signals humans cannot detect, and remember every trap, every farmer, and every mistake made against them. For years, they ran circles around the people trying to stop them. But a small group of researchers and farmers finally cracked the code, and the answer had nothing to do with bigger guns or stronger fences. It was something far stranger, the border that should not exist. Right now, on a quiet ranch in Sweetgrass, Montana, a fourth-generation rancher named Maggie Nutter walks along an old barbed wire fence that separates her land from Canada. She repairs the same wire every summer, and she told CBS News that she stares across that line every single day, wondering when the first wave will finally arrive. Because just across that border, something terrifying is moving south. They call them super pigs. They are bigger, smarter, and tougher than anything farmers in Texas or Alabama have ever dealt with. Dr. Ryan Brook of the University of Saskatchewan has been tracking them for over a decade, and he has logged more than 62,000 wild pig sightings across Canada. One of those sightings happened just 18 miles from the Minnesota border. He said something in a recent CBC interview that should make every farmer in America sit up straight. He called them the most invasive animal on the planet. Here is what makes them so dangerous. These animals are hybrids, a mix of escaped Eurasian wild boars released in the 1980s for diversified farming and regular domestic pigs that wandered off. When the wild boar meat market crashed around 2001, farmers in Canada simply opened their gates and let them go. Nobody thought they would survive the brutal Canadian winters, but they did more than survive. They grew thicker fur, longer legs, and bigger bodies. They learned to dig snow tunnels and bed down under deep drifts. And now, in the year 2026, they are walking south. A single sow can produce 2 litters a year, with up to 6 piglets in each one. That means populations can double in less than 12 months if nothing stops them. Dr. Brooks said the question is no longer whether they will cross into the United States. The question is what anyone plans to do when they arrive. You can probably already feel why this matters. The pigs we have been fighting for decades are bad enough. The ones coming now are worse. And the only reason farmers in places like Texas, Missouri, and Alabama are even surviving the current invasion is that they finally figured out the original trick, the one that started everything. The day fear stopped working. Adam McClendon farms about 8,000 acres of peanuts, corn, and cotton across several counties in southwestern Georgia. He has been fighting feral hogs for 15 years straight, and he told the Associated Press that the pigs cost his family more than $100,000 every single year. That is over $1.5 million in damage from one farm alone. And for years, Adam tried every fear-based deterrent ever invented. He tried propane cannons that boomed like gunfire every few minutes. He installed motion-activated strobe lights that flashed across his fields like lightning storms. He sprayed predator urine, ammonia compounds, and chemical repellents along the edges of his peanut rows. Each one worked beautifully for the first few nights. Then the pigs came back, and they brought friends. What Adam did not know at first was that he was actually making the problem worse. Every loud noise the pigs survived taught them something valuable. Those noises do not bite, that lights do not chase, that smells without consequences are just background. Dr. Billy Higginbotham of Texas, A&M AgriLife Extension, said it best in a Smithsonian interview. He said, "If you do not know how to outsmart these pigs, you are just further educating them." The United States Department of Agriculture estimates that feral hogs cause around $2.5 billion every single year. There are more than 6 million of them spread across at least 35 states. Mike Bodenchuk, the Texas State Director for USDA Wildlife Services, told reporters that the Texas hog population has stayed locked at roughly 3 million since 2011, no matter how much money is spent fighting them. The hardest pill to swallow came from a study that surprised everyone. Recreational hunting, the very thing most farmers relied on, was making things worse. Hunting pressure only kills about 2 to 3% of pigs in a given area, according to Dr. Brook. Worse than that, it pushes the survivors deeper into the night, making them harder to trap, harder to spot, and far harder to remove later. Some states, like Kansas and Nebraska, eventually banned hog hunting completely, and biologists actually celebrated the decision. Adam McClendon and thousands of farmers like him were attacking the wrong sense entirely. The pigs were not afraid of what they saw or heard. The pigs were tuned into something else entirely. Something biological, something farmers had been ignoring for generations. The nose that reads the future. Carl Jackson and his son, CJ, farm about 800 acres of corn, soybeans, and wheat along the Alabama River in Wilcox County. They also raise 200 head of cattle. And one evening, Carl told the AgWeb reporter Chris Bennett something that changed how researchers thought about hogs forever. He said a single pig will get into a cornfield and knock down 30 stalks just to take 4 bites off the ears. He said one boar can root up an area the size of a living room in soybeans in just one night. CJ added something even more disturbing. They lost calves that fell into the deep root holes the hogs dug and could not climb back out. The Jacksons started noticing something strange. The pigs always came on humid nights right after the dew settled on the corn. So Carl reached out to researchers, and what they found cracked the entire mystery wide open. Pigs do not really see the world the way other animals do. They are dichromats with weak, long-distance vision, and they rely almost completely on their sense of smell. But this is where it gets wild. According to a major research review published on PubMed Central titled The Pig Olfactory Brain, pigs have 1,113 functional olfactory receptor genes. To put that in perspective, dogs have only 811. Humans have fewer than 400. Pigs literally smell more of the world than any tracking dog ever bred. They can detect food buried up to 25 feet underground. They can pick up the chemical signature of corn, sweetened by overnight dew, from across an entire field. And here is the part that will probably surprise you the most. Pigs have 8 different types of scent-producing glands on their bodies. They mark, communicate, and warn each other constantly using chemical signals that humans cannot detect at all. Every time one pig got scared or trapped, the rest of the sounder learned about it within minutes. That meant the Jacksons and farmers like them were never really fighting one pig at a time. They were fighting a chemical conversation, a living network. And it gets worse, because pigs are walking disease carriers too. Dr. Mark Smith of Auburn University warned that wild pigs are known carriers of more than 30 bacterial and viral diseases. Swine brucellosis, leptospirosis, and pseudorabies are just the beginning. Dr. Jim LaCour, the Louisiana state wildlife veterinarian, said that in some parishes, nearly half of all hogs are infected with pseudorabies, and Louisiana sees 4 to 5 human cases of swine brucellosis every single year. So farmers had to stop thinking like trappers and start thinking like communicators. They had to figure out how to speak the pig's chemical language. And the first word they learned to say turned out to be 3 pounds of fermented corn in a 5-gallon bucket. The corridor that whispers to pigs. A farmer in South Carolina named James M. shared his story with the company that makes a trapping system called the Pig Brig. He said he followed the conditioning advice exactly as instructed, and within a short period, the first sounder of 17 pigs was completely gone. Then he started preparing for sounder number 2. He did not fire a single shot during the entire conditioning phase. He just let the smell do the talking. This is where farmers finally turned the tide. Instead of trying to scare pigs away or hide their crops, they started overloading the pigs with stronger smells in deliberate locations. The technique uses fermented corn, often called sour mash, soaked in water for several days until it produces a powerful alcohol-based odor. The smell carries for miles in the right wind, and it lights up a pig's brain like a Christmas tree. But the genius part was not the bait itself, it was the placement. Farmers stopped scattering corn randomly and started building what researchers now call scent corridors. These are concentrated paths of strong-smelling bait placed strategically between the pigs' bedding areas and the protected crops. The pigs would lock onto that smell and follow it night after night, completely bypassing the cornfields they used to destroy. Rod Pinkston, a retired United States Army soldier who founded a company called Jaeger Pro, took this idea to its limit. He developed something he calls integrated wild pig control. He told farmers that the entire goal should be removing the whole sounder in a single sequence, never one pig at a time. His team documented one Texas farmer who removed 120 feral pigs from a single hayfield in just 1 week using the cellular trigger system. You can probably see the pattern forming now. Farmers stopped trying to win individual battles and started thinking in groups. They started conditioning entire families of pigs to walk into the same place every night, exactly the way the pigs themselves had been conditioning each other for years. But there was still one more piece missing: knowing when to drop the trap. The patience that catches everything. There is a moment that defines modern hog trapping. It happens in the dark, somewhere between 11 at night and 2 in the morning. A farmer is sitting at home watching a live feed from a cellular trail camera. He sees the pigs arrive in 2s and 3s. He counts them: 17, 19, 23. His finger hovers over a button on his phone, and he waits some more. This patience is what separated the farmers who finally won from the ones who kept losing. Dr. Ditchkoff's research showed something brutal about traditional trapping. If even one pig escapes a trap, it teaches the rest of the sounder to avoid that location, that smell, and sometimes that type of bait altogether. They call this learned behavior trap shy, and it spreads through the sounder like wildfire. One mistake can ruin an entire farm for months. Mark Popajoy, the general manager at the company that makes Boarbuster, explained that most farmers can start catching hogs within 24 hours of assembling the trap. The technology gives the user total control through their phone, and most importantly, it actually works. Dr. Higginbotham puts the math in plain terms. Researchers used to think pigs scattered far after a trap failed. A brand new study published in Pest Management Science in March of this year tracked 18 GPS-collared female pigs across multiple sounders after partial trapping events. The average movement was only 1.2 kilometers. The pigs did not run away. They stayed close to the food, which means every farmer who pulled the trigger too early literally turned their best trapping site into the pig's new classroom. So the trick was patience, brutal, exhausting patience. But even with all that patience, one farm could never win this war alone. The next breakthrough required something much harder than technology. It required neighbors to actually work together. The watershed that came back to life. In the state of Missouri, something remarkable has been happening since 2016. The Feral Hog Elimination Partnership, funded through the 2018 Farm Bill, brought together 18 federal and state agencies along with 48 elimination specialists. They had one rule that changed everything. Every property owner in a target watershed had to coordinate, share trail camera data, and synchronize trapping schedules. Kevin Kreider, the cooperative feral hog outreach educator at the University of Missouri Extension, shared the results, and they are honestly stunning. Feral hog occupancy across Missouri watersheds has dropped by 84% since 2016. In 2024 alone, the program removed 5,105 hogs, which was actually a 35% decrease from the previous year. Why? Because the population itself was shrinking. They were finally winning. The program uses 21 thermal drone operators who scout pig locations at night. Helicopters launch on those exact GPS coordinates at first light between December and March when the leaves are off the trees. On the ground, Boarbuster, Pig Brig, and Jaeger Pro traps run continuously across every cooperating property. Texas built its own version of this model years earlier. The state passed House Bill 716 in 2011, making commercial helicopter hog hunting legal. A company called Helibacon, based in Bryan, Texas, now flies clients over more than 300,000 acres of ranch land in a Bell 212 helicopter. North Dakota farmers Brett Close and Devin Hersman drove 1,200 miles and paid $4,000 each for a 2-hour flight, just to help thin the population. And researchers found one more reason the cooperative approach matters in ways nobody expected. A team from Auburn University published research in the journal Biological Invasions in 2022, showing that pulling pigs out of a watershed reduced E. coli levels by 75% and fecal coliform bacteria by 50%. Removing hogs literally cleans the drinking water for entire counties downstream. So this is no longer just an agriculture problem. It is a public health issue. And once farmers realized that, the funding finally started flowing. But even with all this success, scientists knew that traps alone could never finish the job, because as long as sows kept giving birth, the war would never end. So they turned to a weapon that does not involve a single bullet, the future nobody saw coming. In the year 2017, the Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller stood in front of cameras and announced what he called the feral hog apocalypse. He had approved a warfarin-based bait called Kaput, designed to thin pig populations through a slow-acting blood thinner. The plan lasted exactly 53 days. A feral hog meat processor in Hubbard, Texas, filed a lawsuit on the 1st of March. By the 26th of April, they could not afford the legal battle, but the search for a non-lethal solution did not stop there. In June of 2021, a Texas-based company launched a product called HogStop. It is a male contraceptive feed bait developed by Daniel Loper and his team. He told Pig Progress magazine that they observed a 60% reduction in sperm motility and major morphology changes in boars that consumed the bait for just 5 days. The science behind it targets the boar's reproductive ability without killing them outright. At the same time, USDA researchers continued testing a system called Gonacon, an injectable immunocontraceptive vaccine. According to USDA documentation, a single dose can reduce fertility in pigs and other wildlife for anywhere from 1 to 6 years. The trick is that the sows continue to behave normally inside the sounder, which keeps the social structure stable while quietly stopping new piglets from being born. And then there is sodium nitrite, marketed as Hogon 2 in Australia, where it was registered in 2019. A 2020 trial in north-central Texas, published by Snow and colleagues in Scientific Reports, achieved a 91% reduction in pig visits and killed 139 pigs at 10 bait sites in just one night. The catch was that loose bait crumbs poisoned passerine birds. Researchers are now developing inflatable scare dancers, the same ones used outside car dealerships, to keep non-target wildlife away from the bait sites. But here is the part of this story that should give everyone hope. The reason American farmers are still standing is that they did not bet everything on one tool. They built a stack, scent corridors at the perimeter, cellular trail cameras watching 24/7, whole sounder traps in the fields, thermal drones at night, helicopters at first light, coordinated removal across entire counties, Gonacon and HogStop trials in the lab, water source restrictions during drought, and neighbors finally trusting each other after decades of fighting alone. And that is the real genius behind everything. Adam McClendon still farms 8,000 acres in Georgia. The Jackson family still walks their bottomlands in Alabama. Maggie Nutter still repairs her old barbed wire fence on the Canadian border, watching, waiting, and praying that what worked in Missouri and Texas will work in Montana when the super pigs finally arrive. The trick they all discovered was not a gadget or a poison or a magic bullet. It was finally learning to think like a pig. That is the full story of how farmers turned the tide against one of the most destructive invaders on Earth. Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me which trick surprised you the most.